good afternoon, or good morning, everyone, or even good evening, depending on where in the world you are. We are here in London, live. This is a live webinar, Lisa, isn't it? Very live. So thank you all of those of you who's joined us today. I am Cecilia Lavin, and I am the sales director here at InEvent. I'm joined by my wonderful friend and wonderful client and partner and everything. We do loads of things together, don't we? But this webinar, that's obviously a part of the InEvent Talks series, as we said, live from London, about empowering you to create engaging events. It's actually Lisa's brainchild. So I will let Lisa do the introduction of herself and this webinar, but thank you so much for being here today, Lisa.
Well, thank you for the amazing introduction. And as always, it's amazing working with you. As Cecilia said, I am Lisa Collins, Managing Director of Dovetail Creative. And Dovetail is working with all sorts of different organisations to help them bring like-minded groups of individuals together and really help communities thrive. So we're working with membership organisations, communities, and actually corporate organisations too. And they all have this one question, how do we now engage our audience? Post-COVID, we've now learned a huge number of ways to deliver events, be that in person, virtually, or now this new hybrid way of working, which is really exciting. And I thought it was about time we had an event to try and talk about some of these things. And who better than Cecilia here, who is the gem of knowledge when it comes to virtual events. So we're here to talk top tips about delivering those events now and how to really, really engage the audience. So I alluded to the words virtual, hybrid, in person.
Yeah.
Talk me through the differences and how you make the most of those environments.
Well, isn't that the $1,000,000 question, I guess? Well, in essence, a virtual event is anything that's streamed online, I guess, in one way or another. It's communicating your message to an audience that's not physically there in person. In-person event, obviously, it is an event taking place where your audience is there in a physical contact in front of you. Hybrid, I guess there's different meanings to it, right? And I would say that I don't think there's an official definition. It's up to each person's own interpretation of what a hybrid event is. And that's why when I speak to our clients and they say, I want to create a hybrid event, or, I need tools for a hybrid event, I ask them, what do you mean by hybrid? And that's actually a super important question to ask yourself. What do you mean by hybrid? Because some people consider a hybrid event being an event in person, like, even like we are now, obviously maybe with an audience, but then you stream it online. They see that as being hybrid because there's an in-person element and there's a virtual element. For me personally, and I say that this is me personally, I believe that it's a hybrid event if there's an engagement between the in-person audience and the virtual audience.
And in that engagement, what does that look like?
Well, that could basically be so many different things, right? There's obviously the I guess the natural way of looking at networking opportunities. So for example, as we know, when you go to an in-person event, you're not going to sit with your laptop, right? You are there to embrace what's going on in the audience or in the environment. But if you use an event app as an example, you could still then engage with what is happening in that session, and the virtual audience is engaging at the same time. And you can communicate via messages between the different audiences. So even if you're not there, you could be like, oh, hey, James, are you actually in person? Are you there in person or are you virtually? And James goes, actually, I'm here in person. He was like, oh my God, did you see that last session? That was so amazing. They can still communicate about it. But if you don't have an event app, and you're just basically taking what's happening in person and streaming it online, you create no engagement. And what happens virtually is that the virtual audience will almost just like, they will just listen to that information, but to engage them and keep them entertained is super difficult because they can just switch off at any second.
And what about actually bringing in virtual speakers to the event? Would you class that as a working hybrid?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's still obviously like that could be, I guess it is very much a hybrid. And I think we need to consider these options, because what happens if a speaker gets ill?
Yep.
Right? Well, what happens if they cannot show up on the day? Like, I know the fact of like getting COVID isn't as common anymore, but we have normal colds and flus and stomach bugs and whatever.
Train strikes are definitely
train strikes
these days.
indeed.
Yes.
Yeah, particularly here in the UK, guys. I know it's not maybe as familiar in the rest of the world, but in the UK, train strikes is a massive problem right now. So what do you do if the speaker can't get to your event, but they are your keynote? What do you do? Like, you need to make that allowance that either we make a plan B to make it virtual, like hybrid, so we can bring them in and plan for that, or you're going to have to then just miss out on your keynote speaker.
Yeah. I have to say, I got a great case study of what I would class as a good hybrid event. It was actually a press event. They had a number of the leadership team in the actual room.
Yeah.
One of the leadership team couldn't be in the room, so they brought her in on screen. And then to engage the press at the very end, they gave the press the opportunity to actually come in on video call, turn their cameras on and ask their questions in person. And I think that's a great way to engage people.
Oh, it's a great way. And, because not everyone is going to be comfortable going on camera. But some people like it because they feel like, actually, I'm getting really involved in this scenario. And that's actually a good point. If you have any questions, on the right-hand side of the webinar platform where you have the chat, there's a questions tab. And if you want to, we would love to bring you up on screen later on to really show how this hybrid can actually work. Because me and Lisa are obviously here in person. We're engaging with you guys online, so we could do this. But I think the problem you have is considering hybrid is you have to consider the production in the live, like in-person event. And that can become expensive and it can become complicated depending on who you work with as a production company, as an example. It doesn't have to be super complicated. As long as you obviously have, AV to consider the video and obviously the audio, and have good technicians who understand the software that you're working with and can manage that accordingly, it is actually super easy.
Yep.
But do you want that? Like, an in-person event is for you to have engagement. If you want the online audience to just listen to what you're saying in that, fine. But you're not going to get the engagement from them. They're not going to understand your message as much as the in-person. So if you're happy with that, fine, do it. But if you want everyone to be equally as engaged, then actually the in-person to be engaged as well, because they're like, oh, wow, you're bringing on the virtual audience, then you're going to have to pay for it.
But it's a win-win on engagement.
Absolutely.
I want to take you back to something you said at the start. You talked about a virtual event being streamed.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about being streamed, are we streaming it live, or is it something we could record?
It doesn't really matter, to be fair. You are streaming the event or the content at some point, right? Whether that's then live or on demand or simulated live stream, as we said, right? That is still a virtual event. The difference where you need to consider what you do is what engagement do you want?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, if you're recording it and delivering it, then you don't have that engagement with your speakers.
Yeah, absolutely. So but there's another way of doing it. You can pre-record the content, because there's a lot of issues that can happen with a live event. we discussed them even before doing this, right? You know, we were like, okay, what can go wrong? What do we need to do to make sure that doesn't happen? But you can record it, you can stream it, and then you can still bring on the speakers at the end for a Q&A, right? That's then creating a bit of engagement. Whilst I really like the live, my events team are like, oh, Cecilia, you always ask for live, right? But I like it because I can hear, as we said, go in and look in the chat, and I can be, hi, Leonard, you know, nice to see you. Achelen is here as well. You know, Deji, it's good to see you guys. You know, I can see the questions as they come in. And I like that. I like having that because now, you know, hopefully Deji's like, oh my God, she gave me a shout out. You know, like I'm gonna ask a question later, or, you know, like they feel engaged because you're naming people as you go along. When you do a simulated live stream, it's just that, you know, you push it live at one exact time. On-demand content means that anyone can go in at any point to review the material. On-demand content, I believe, is super useful for training, right? If you want to deliver a message and you do not require any engagement, say it's a company like half-year results, right? They just want to communicate, this is our results for the year. Now you have the information, you can do what you want with the information. Then a sort of simulated live stream that then goes on demand is perfect. Because people who want to join live, because it's news, right, can join then. But then people who couldn't make it can go back in and see it at any time. My frustration, not frustration, that's maybe the wrong word. My problem is when people rely too much on on-demand content. Because I'm not going to lie, that doesn't change if people are going to attend and engage with your, you know, your message. I get invited to loads of events. I register if I'm super interested in the event, right? But something can happen. Something will come in the way. And I can't attend the event. And I'm not going to lie, and I'm sorry to everyone out there in the events industry if I register for your event and I don't show up, but I probably only go back and review the material in about 1% of the time.
Interesting.
Because I don't have enough time.
Interesting.
But if it's a training course, it brings me into certification, or, you know, okay, I want to know how it's gone for my client because I need to speak to them. Of course, I'll go in. So ultimately, it's all about the content.
Interesting. So talking about a little bit deeper about on demand, because again, another challenge that clients bring to me is we've got this live event. Yeah. We're going to stream it live, but we're also going to make the content available on demand afterwards. Yeah. Which is all great. Yeah. But do they charge for it? They've charged for this in-person event. Is it right that on-demand content should then be charged for? I guess this is, again, a personal opinion, right? And I'm not going to say there's not a right or a wrong here. But I would say if you charge for the event itself because of the content, then you should always charge for it, right? Because the content is what's of value. If you're charging for an in-person event because it's more to do with the venue, right? It's due to the cost that it's about delivering the event. Like, what you just got to consider is, will people pay money for this content? Is it exclusive enough for someone to go in and say, yeah, I'm going to pay that amount of money? Obviously, if you say yes, like this content is absolutely, you cannot get this content anywhere else, then absolutely charge for it. But do bear in mind that going to the event in person and taking in the content live and whilst meeting, meeting other people in person, and then just being able to just take it, you know, when you want, you cannot charge the same amount of money. Yes.
You know, and I think that's the thing. But again, if you're doing a live event and you're charging for an in-person and you're charging for the virtual environment as well, then again, consider you really need to make sure that there's value in it for your virtual attendees to pay that amount of money. And you have to be really clear about explaining what those, opportunities are. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's
no,
sort of like,
it absolutely does.
because they could say, yeah, virtual event, it's live, it's virtual, and you pay £100 for this. In person, you pay 500, as an example, right? For the virtual attendee, you have to be really clear, like, what you're going to get for that £100.
So it really needs to have CPD or something like that.
Absolutely. Or like, is it those networking and opportunities? Are you going to be able to go in and see all the attendees of the event after, so you can communicate with them after the event?
I mean,
right?
my approach would certainly be to make that content available free of charge.
Yeah.
Or chop it up into snippets.
Yeah.
Because I actually think content, like we're recording today, we're delivering it live. We will make this available on demand.
Yeah.
But we will have it available for other people to watch afterwards.
Yeah.
And that helps both of our sales pipelines.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's just making sure then that you have that available for a certain period of time. And as you said, you cannot, just because you've delivered the event, you can't just give up on the content and just let it be like, here you go. Like, produce, as you said, like little snippets of the key pieces of information that people wanted. You don't have to sit there and watch through 12 hours of content in order for you to get the key information. Instead, we'll create this little snippet video, but you can only access it through the platform, and you need to have bought your ticket in order for you to get it.
I'm going to challenge you on some stats here, and I don't expect you to have these accurate, promise.
Yeah.
But obviously, this is part of the InEvent series that we're doing today. You make these all available on your platform for people to watch afterwards. Yeah. What sort of percentages are you getting coming back to watch those sessions?
Oh, wow. That is a very tricky question. I think if you have seen it live, you don't necessarily come back to it. You come back and watch something that you haven't seen before, right? That's being honest. Because, well, me certainly would never do it. If I've watched the webinar or the sort of the event live, I wouldn't go back to watch it because I've already processed that knowledge.
But there could be some incentives there for that person to pass it on to a friend.
It could be. I think the key thing you have to consider, and this goes into the community aspects, is I think people miss out on consistently releasing new information. So with like a software like, InEvent, sorry for the shameless plug here. There's many more, but this is a shameless plug here. You have access to the software and each event for the duration of your contract. So if that's 1 year and you produce an event and you've got 9 months left of your contract, you have access to that for 9 months. You don't need to necessarily set up a new event every single time. Instead, create a community within the software that keeps on going back into the same event, but you just release new information. You release new videos, you release new webinars.
Oh, I like that.
You just maybe once a week it's, a new 10-minute session that's being put out. And if people can't attend that week, they will surely go back because they're in there as a community. They know that the information is there for them to help develop.
Oh, that's a very nice tactic.
Yeah.
You talked about the platform, and we are using InEvent today, and I urge you to test it, try and break it, ask questions. They won't break it, will they?
No.
But I wanted to talk about the technology you might need, certainly to deliver an event like we're delivering today.
Yeah.
And I have taken a photograph of our setup. It is very basic.
Yeah.
But talk us through what technology you might need.
Well, okay, so there's obviously two aspects to it. There's the software side and there's a hardware side, right? And then there's all the other little bits and pieces you don't even think about. Like we discussed before we got here, hardwired internet. You think that Wi-Fi is sufficient, which it can be. But if you really want to create a foul-proof event, then absolutely stick to hardwired internet. We're even talking about the laptops that's powering everything, right? You need to have a robust system in order for it to power because you are streaming content. Like you're taking all of this video and audio feed. And you know what can happen in Zoom sometimes, right? You sit there and it blurs out and everything goes funny. Sorry.
It's just one of those things that happens.
Just...
But in terms of the technology, we today have got really quite simple microphones with us, which you can easily get from Amazon.
Indeed.
We've got one camera.
Yeah. A 4K one.
A 4K camera. And that's about it.
That's about it. I think that's the thing. Hopefully people can see here that the quality of this image is obviously super good. If I could have had my choice, I probably would have had 2 cameras, but I only have 1 camera. So, you know, that's what we had to do here today. We could have done 2 different shots. Because, you know, I'm going to show this and my production team might kill me for this. But, you know, within our platform, you can have a number of different cameras. Here, you can see, this is my laptop camera. And you can see how terrible the quality of this one is, right? Most people don't realize that it's that bad. You can see the difference in the quality here now. So it makes a huge difference just to invest a little bit of money in, like, you know, a 4K camera and a small microphone kit that produces the audio and the video that you want. I would say that this kit would probably be maybe about £1,000, £1,500.
But if you're delivering the number of events that you'd expect people to do, that's a small investment.
And the other thing that I try and encourage people to do, that if you do, like, say, a webinar series or an event series or anything like that, if you as a company have the kit, send it out to your speakers. Send the kit to your speakers just to get the best quality, because there's nothing worse than when you see a speaker online and their image is blurry. There's like crackling noises. No matter how much speaker preparation you do, sometimes they still show up on the day and it's going to happen. So if you can mitigate these circumstances to just really ensure, because that is also creating engagement, because people are actually like, oh, the image is really good and I can see these people. I feel like they're engaging with me. Like, that's going to make a difference.
And I have, and certainly during COVID, I worked a lot delivering virtual events, and I did work with a company that sent the kit out. They sent a simple green screen to put behind, so we all had the same backdrop. They sent a simple microphone and a very, very simple camera.
Exactly.
Oh, and the laptop as well, packaged up.
Branded. I know, I worked with them as well. You know, they could brand the box and everything like that, and you could choose different cameras. So actually, if you did go into a studio, you could ask for these upgraded cameras. So you don't need to buy it. You can rent it for each appointment. But if you do loads of them, it might be more cost effective to buy them in the end, right? So it's think about what's important. Like, this is we're doing this webinar. If this would have been a bigger event, of course, we may have enlisted a production company or whatever. In terms of then moving on to the software side, I think one of my only pieces of advice that I think actually super important is don't overcomplicate it. Like, really think about what is your message and how capable are your audience? Like, how accessible is your event going to be like? So you obviously have platforms that has all of these, like, you know, AI matchmaking, networking things. But if you are going to go in and deliver half an hour, you know, your company results as an example, you're not going to use it.
You don't need it, do you?
And then there's some softwares and some things that you need to make a download for. Is your audience willing to download something? It's the same. We said we have an app, right? But we also ensure that our software is cloud-based. So anyone can access our software via their mobile phone, their computer, or their tablet. So if they didn't want to download the app, they're still not missing out, because they can just go on their web browser on their mobile phone, access the event, and do everything exactly the same as you do on a laptop or on the app.
Yeah.
So what does your audience want?
Yeah, I delivered an event a few weeks back, delivering on InEvent's platform.
Yeah.
And one of our external guests, he wasn't a guest, he was a delegate, wanted to come on and ask a question.
Yeah.
We couldn't bring his video screen on because he was actually driving in the car.
Yeah.
What we did enable was his voice.
Yeah.
So he was able to talk his question through without the voice. But it shows how simple it is and bringing somebody in on a platform like this.
And it is. It's just more, obviously, again, is it the right thing to do?
Yeah.
You know, because I know we work with some companies where, you know, they're talking about their new product releases. And some of it, they say their audience can become really aggravated, you know, and they can be very, very, not aggressive, but they can become quite, you know, critical. So if you're doing an event like that, and you know your audience is that, you may not want to enable the chat.
Yep.
And you may not definitely want to bring up people on screen because you're like, oh, how is this going to work? But if it is the right engagement, and, you know, it's more of a collaborative thinking environment, you know, absolutely, then you can do it. You can do it by a click of a button.
So keeping on the subject of technology.
Yeah.
We're in a physical event.
Yeah.
Our main conference of the year. We've got 1,200 people in the room. We've got all of these great speakers coming on stage. Yeah. However, we do want to encourage that virtual audience to come in as well.
Yeah.
What tech are we going to need to use there? Do we go to our AV company or do we need something completely separate?
Well, it depends on how experienced the AV company is, right? And the great thing nowadays, where I've seen massive improvements, is that most venues have invested in hybrid tech, which is phenomenal. You know, it's great to see because they recognize the need for it. So, you know, it's, if you are in the right venue, I think this is, again, needs to be a part of your brief when you start the event planning. Is hybrid an important part of our objectives and goals here? And if so, is it more cost effective to actually go with a venue that does that rather than bringing in an external company? Or is the venue more important because of location or whatever it might be, and we need to bring in an AV production company? You know, you just need to be fully aware of the capabilities. But it can be simple. Again, it depends on your budget and how you want it to look. We did a hybrid event about 18 months ago or so, and the venue was an immersive space where they projected the screens on the walls.
Wow.
Right? So it's a blank space, and then they projected the images. So that made it super easy for us, because what we did is we had the live speaker in the room, and then we brought in the virtual speaker, and they were projected on one of the main walls. And they could then speak to each other, right?
Very
because
nice.
The in-person person, we obviously had a camera focusing on her that brought into the virtual environment. So they could still see and hear each other and everything. And then on the sides of the wall, we then brought in the chats and the questions. So whilst the audience is sitting live looking at all of this, they can also see all the questions and all the chats that's coming through, which is a mix between the audience in person and the virtual.
Engagement tips.
Engagement tips. Because again, if they see a question coming up, that could then obviously be from someone virtually. Whilst the virtual audience, at one point, we actually created a camera angle that looked at the whole room. So they could see the audience. So they felt like they were sitting in a chair behind that audience member, which is, again, that's another tip. Make sure you feel like they almost sit there in the room, right? And then that you could see like the chats on the side. So if they typed in a question on their laptop, they could see it appear on the side of the wall. So they could see it's working, like, oh, you know, I'm doing this poll, you know, I can see the results changing and everything. So that, I think that is, it can be easy. I'm not saying it's cheap. I'm not saying it is, because it depends on what your venue can and cannot do and what they've already got.
Yeah, and talking about engagement, I've also seen companies send out in the post to their virtual audience things to engage them, like a plastic glass of wine so they can have wine and peanuts at the end of the day. Have you seen any other things?
Oh, I saw so much of that. you can do like the t-shirts and everything like that. So people can like sort of design their own customized t-shirts so they can all wear them on the day, and then they can take a photo, upload it in a photo gallery so everyone can see them when they're at home, they're in person. I've like even the wine tastings, like the networking reception afterwards, create 2 separate ones. Create one in the room, but then create one virtually. Send them a nice bottle of wine and some snacks, particularly if they're paying for the ticket. Because the thing is, if they receive that in the post, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, this event is tomorrow. Shit. Now I've got this in the post, I've definitely got to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely. Talk me through timings. Obviously, you've got this great big event going on. Mm-hmm. It's an international event. Okay. You're delivering it here in London, but you want to attract an audience in Australia.
Okay. Yeah.
Is it going to work or not? And should you really consider it if you're going to do an event here physically?
Well, I think the honest answer is probably no, because the time difference.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you would run an event here, it's already late evening there. People are not going to go online then. Let's be realistic. So what you could do is obviously create an engagement campaign for the on-demand content. Again, is your content worth them tuning into it?
Yeah.
So don't focus on the registration process prior to the event. Focus on then more the content after the event, maybe. But if you are then streaming different sessions, because some companies do it, right? They produce different parts. We've done it together, actually.
We have done it.
We created one element of one event for the Europe market and one for the US market, because that was our key target market.
Yep.
And, so we created content that then was focused on those different time zones where it was going to work. And to be honest, that's a very easy mistake.
It is an easy mistake.
People don't consider time zones.
But it's not just an easy mistake. I think sometimes people can kind of overthink it as well.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think that's the thing, right? If you want to create an event that, considers all time zones and, achieve, sort of attendance from all of those, you have to put in the work as well.
You do. They're not easy,
are
they?
They're not easy at all. And you're going to have to consider, is that then worth it in the ROI and everything? If it's an in-person, we know it, right? People fly. Again, nowadays, people are more conscious of the events they decide to travel to. Is the event going to be worth paying that money, spending that time, being away from their family, being away from their comfort? Is that event going to be worth it? And that's what you're competing with right now.
Yeah, and I think message out to all people looking to host events like this. Really make sure you know what your USP is, that you've got a real reason to generate that audience, and don't do it just for the sake of doing.
Yeah.
So, moving on, talking about skills that you need to deliver this event. Your team, the people in your team. It's just you and I in the room today. We managed to put the kit together, but it's not like we haven't done this before.
Exactly.
What do people need to think about in terms of skills?
Well, oh God, that is definitely $1 million question. The way I would probably say this, and I do apologize if someone finds this that I'm going around it, but it's just making sure that you have people around you who can basically bridge the gaps that you don't have, right? And outsource to the people that, I am very sorry.
I was going to say this again.
I'm sorry. See, this is a typical example of being at a webinar when you probably shouldn't, but apologies for that. It's, for example, if you want to use technology, right? You want to use a software, and I know it's fully overwhelming out there and you have no idea where to start, or, contact one company. right? Or someone that you might know. LinkedIn is a great place, just putting out something. And just ask them, right? Really do ask for, but obviously you do have to make sure that you feel that you're being trusted and not just sold to.
Yeah,
right.
And a shout out to a platform that I use for this, other than LinkedIn, because I do use LinkedIn, but there is a platform out there called Guild, and it's a great way of sharing tips and advice and asking for best practice, really.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Or even ask your friends. Like, nowadays we all have used something, right? We've all used something. But I think it's more to realize that, for example, like even us, when we came on this, I can set up this equipment, I can make it work, but our team is here in the back end, and they're like, okay, maybe move the camera a little bit that way, the microphone, move it here, Cecilia, because otherwise it's getting a bit muffled. Because you cannot think, you have to focus on something. We had to focus on getting this ready. They can focus on that and just telling us, because they're on the other side as well. So always make sure that you have people who are, who's covering the things that you can't do. Don't do it all yourself.
I remember back in the early days, delivering what I would class actually as a hybrid event. So we there was myself and a colleague in person in a studio actually, and it was just the two of us. And we had a virtual audience coming in. What we should have had in the room was a third person to actually advise us where to stand, where we look good, if we could be heard. But you learn from your mistakes, don't you?
And I think that's the thing, right? Is if you have done it once, like look back at it and think, what could I have done better? Because we can all do better. Like I know, for example, ideally here, I would have loved 2 cameras. Like, and I know that. But, that's fine. It's like, just think about it next time. But again, just think about your purpose, right? What's the right format for you? There's no point of coming in with a huge video streaming camera here, because it's you and me.
It's just us.
It's just us. We're not that special. No, we are. But, there's no point of spending several £1,000s when, we're delivering a message and it's something that's going to be on demand later. We're not charging for it. We just want to educate people. We want to bring people together. This works.
It does work. Yeah. Let's move on and talk about the event's workflow.
Okay.
So obviously we hit this digital world.
Yeah.
And back in the day, we delivered in-person events where people were organised. The events were in their calendars 6 months in advance. Yeah. We knew how many people would have coming and we could plan.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like that anymore. No. So I'm keen to understand, how has that workflow changed? Registrations, what do we need to consider around marketing, all of those sorts of things?
Well, I think one of the key things you need to consider is what is going to give you enough time to deliver a good event, right? If you release registration for an in-person event and you allow people to register up until the day before the event, that's going to be a disaster. Because you're going to need catering, you're going to need chairs, you're going to need to do the work, the work plan. But if you're delivering a virtual event and you have unlimited spaces or whatever, or you got, 500 places, keep registration open for sure, because it's not really going to make an impact, right?
Yeah. And keep promoting it during the event as well.
I think that's the thing as well, is that, when you talk about engagement and an event, you cannot just think, I'm going to do this pre-event and then I'm just going to stop. You have to continue with your engagement tactics during the event and also post-event. Don't just drop off the end of the earth after the event is done. Because what's that's telling your audience? Like, actually, our content and what we're doing isn't important enough for us to continue talking about it.
Yeah.
And again, with the pre-event engagement, consider, when are people going to engage? If you are doing some networking, like for example, and again, I'm giving my personal opinion here, this is just me, not everyone is the same, but if I'm going to an event, I will rarely go in and look in the event until maybe a week before. because it's too far out in the diary. Yep. I can't think about it. So if I'm going to network and meet with people, I'm probably looking at it the week before, right?
So in terms of lead time in setting up the platform, you've got plenty of time to go live, haven't you?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing is obviously making sure that you can definitely handle the registration and you can communicate with your audience in one way or another.
And put the date in their diary.
And put the date in the diary for sure.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you have the date firmed, you have the registration, which means you have their details, you can send an email saying, thank you very much, we'll be in contact, further down the line as an example, and they can see the agenda and stuff. Then you can ramp it up as you go along, right? And I'm saying this is a personal opinion. Maybe some people want to go in straight away, but actually, if you're one of the first person, there's not going to be anyone in the platform at that point anyway, right? But obviously, again, different for in person. In person, you need to book flight tickets. You might need to do, do I want to stay an extra day because I want to meet some of these other people there? So again, it depends on your format of the event.
Yeah, most definitely, and definitely something that needs to be thought about up front. Now, I do want to give time for questions.
Yes.
However, before I do, I think many of our audience will want to talk about the finances here. Membership organisations, building your communities, budgets are normally quite tight.
Yeah.
Talk me through the costs of something like this.
Well, something like this, as I said, this is super easy to do, right? And I must say that obviously, hopefully you have all seen that the production quality of this is completely different if you're sitting on a Zoom or a Teams, right? But we're using our webinar product, which starts at £10,000, euros, dollars, depending on conversion rates, right? It starts at that price. For a year.
Not for a one-off.
No, not for a one-off. And you can host as many webinars as you want during that year. You can host 3 today if you wanted to. So if you are creating enough content that can then also be on demand, then that's going to be worth it. As I said, camera kit, probably about £1,500, including the microphones. So say you have 2, and you can ship 1 out to your speaker and 1 to the host as an example, right? And then obviously it is the events team that obviously needs to set everything up. But, it's fairly simple because training and onboarding should be done by the company that you go with. We provide all of that, so you don't need to think about it. So an investment of maybe, £15,000 for 1 year for unlimited content delivery to an audience for up to 500 people per event, I think that's pretty decent.
Yeah, and in terms of benchmarking, clearly there are more platforms than InEvent out there.
Of course,
and I've used them, and they're all about on par. And those are the sorts of costs, unless you go back down to the basics of Teams and Zoom. Again, it all depends what you want to deliver with your events.
And I think that's the thing, right? It's, although, obviously, it's okay to use Teams and Zoom as well. It really is. If that's the right format for you to communicate with your audience, then that's what you should absolutely do. I personally, for example, I hate Teams because even as an audience member, I cannot see everyone. I can't, it's just super, super difficult. But I know it's a corporate institution. Most companies use Teams. So you're just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
But if it was my choice, I would never, ever use it because, I don't find it engaging. I know that this is a one-way communication here to some extent. But, with the changes of the colors, changes of the insert of the lower thirds and things like that. And, we put up the slides before. We're going to show you the slides in a second again. You can completely narrative, how the audience will view what you do. Teams and Zoom, you can't do that. But if it's right for your audience and it's right for your production team, then fine, do it.
Yeah, agreed. And you and I could keep talking for ages about this. And we might have to do episode 2 because I've got a whole host of things that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
But are there any questions that we want to take?
No, I'm not sure if there's one coming through yet. We'll see. I'll give everyone a couple of more minutes to maybe ask a couple of questions. But what we can do in the meantime, whilst we wait, because we do want to wrap this up in a second, is maybe we wanted to give you some tangible tips to take away with you after today. So I put together 2 little slides. So we can bring those up. And then I do believe we have a questions from an audience member who's going to come on later on. But let's show you these couple of slides. So we wanted to give you some top tips about how to create the engagement, right? You can also access these slides on the right-hand side of your screen under the files section. So the bottom one, you can go into those files and you can download these too if you want to take them with you. But basically, the top tips here is, as we mentioned, focus on accessibility, right? Make the tool accessible for your audience to use it. If they do not know how to use the tools, then they're never going to be engaged, right? Make it interesting and dynamic. Again, it's all about the content, and you can have a live DJ at an event if you wanted to, but if your audience is not really going to connect with that, there's no point, right? So make it interesting, but make it dynamic. Ensure all audiences are considered and accommodated for. And this is where I meant, if you're doing a hybrid format, you really want to engage the audiences, you have to consider, how does the virtual audience engage and how does the in-person engage?
And I guess you also have to think about disabilities there as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's like, how accessible do you make the tool for everyone?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I've said, don't force it. Let them choose. So if you want engagement, but your audience is not willing to engage, you cannot force them. Like, there's nothing you can do. So you have to get to know your audience and choose the options that is great for them, in essence. Last one is, effort must be given pre, during, and post event. Yeah. As I said, don't forget, once the event is done, don't stop. Like, don't force it too much, though, right? If you send an email once a week, go in and continue networking. People might get a bit frustrated, but you can create amazing campaigns to get people to sort of
use the content, snippets on social,
go back in. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And obviously, then I also wanted to say, how can you deliver this yourself? Because I think people sometimes struggle with, how do I do this? Like, it sounds complicated, but it's not. So basically, again, I've just said, decide what event format you want to deliver so you can focus on the right tools. If you want to do a webinar, just stream it virtually, absolutely fine. Then just go with that. If you want to do it in person and you're not going to do it, it's absolutely fine not to do hybrid.
Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely fine. I think people are scared of just saying, no, my event is only going to be in person. I don't think it's anything bad with that at all. No, it's actually great.
I think you have to come back to think about your own objectives. Why are you doing this?
Exactly. Absolutely. Ensure you use high quality tools and hardware. So what we mentioned, it's a very simple, easy way. Same laptop, hardwire, internet, the computers. Even if you're not getting a 4K proper camera, get a 4K web camera that you can put over your laptop. The laptop ones are always going to be rubbish. Let's just be honest. Analyze the skill set of your teams and decide how to bridge the gaps. That's exactly what we said, right?
Yep.
If you don't have a person in your team who is the technical, who understands the delivery between the production and the software, go externally, bridge that gap. Do not think you can do it and then you're there at the event and it's a massive fail. Yep. That's even worse. That's going to cost you more money in the end, isn't it?
And do the tech checks as well.
Do the tech checks, yeah. Saying that, though, anything could happen. Actually, I went on a call with a client this morning. Internet's always been fine. 2 minutes before internet goes down. What do you do? Like, it happens.
You have to have a plan B.
Plan B, that's the last point here, actually.
And I can't see your slides.
Exactly. It says, always have a plan B and a C, even potentially D, always a backup. So I always have, obviously, my mobile phone with 4G, which means I can then hotspot. But I can't rely on that if I'm out in the forest. So what do I do then? Maybe I do need to make sure I don't have any client calls because I may not be able to do them.
Yep.
So, and there was one in between as well. Sorry, it's very small text here. Utilizing technology and other tools that provide engagement opportunities. Yeah. So just focus on finding the tools that does help you with all of these things, because it's really hard to create engagement on Zoom. as an example. So if you really do want to create this engagement, then you do definitely need to do it. Anyway, so that is available for anyone to download in the file section. So we hope you like it, and I hope you have some tangible output. But we do have a question.
Great.
Do you have a question?
Are we going to try and bring them up on screen?
Yes, we are indeed.
Wow.
I think we have a wonderful gentleman called Deji who wants to join us on screen.
Wonderful.
Let's see if that. Oh, there we go. Hey, Deji.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Are you good?
I am. Thank you so much for having this. It's been
No problem. Have you enjoyed the talk so far?
I have. It's been very enlightening, I was gonna say. I'm sorry, is there
Great.
more echo coming through? I feel like
Yeah, sorry. Let me it's probably because it's coming from this. Again, we should learn from this. Your voice is coming from my laptop. So let me just mute myself whilst you talk, okay?
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you putting this on. It's been very enlightening. I have a couple questions. I don't want to overload you, but just a couple things that kept coming to mind while you were speaking. And thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us as well. So my first question, I would say, I'll just go bit by bit, and then you can kind of answer after each one. When starting an event, what is your ground zero? And what I mean by that is so personally, with thinking about events or even just across pitches and several things that I do it on my side, I like to start with a theme. So I like to have a theme that just kind of informs everything else that I do. I've seen online that some people prefer to have a compare or a case study of a previous event that they can attempt to recreate or emulate. And I'm just curious about what you start with. So what would you say your ground zero is for an event that you're trying to do?
Okay. Come on. Do you have some ideas, or do you want me to?
You go first, and I'll have a think.
Well, to be honest, for me, Deji, it is mainly actually just about the goals and objectives of the event. And I know that sounds very silly, but if you do not know what you want to achieve, you're never going to achieve it, right? So as you said, a theme to an event is great, but if that doesn't go in line with what you're wanting to achieve, for example, is it sales leads? Is it educating people? Is it driving in revenue? Is it adding value for your sponsors, as an example? There's so many different objectives, right? But if the theme isn't adding value to the objective, then there's no point. And I think this is sometimes where people go wrong, is that they try and be flashy and they try and create all of these amazing things, but it doesn't really align with, what outcome they want. Because if they want to achieve revenue, if it's going to help them throw a big party in the evening because people are going to enjoy themselves so much and then come back the next day and be like, yeah, I'm going to spend money with you, great, do it. If you think that it's then 70 plus people or under 18, they can't party or whatever it is, then don't do it. Do you know what I mean? I know that sounds very silly, but
and I think I'd add to that. Our event today was very much about education.
Yes,
and we were very keen that education took place virtually because we wanted to attract an international audience.
Exactly.
Hence delivering it at the time of day we have. But we also wanted to give a giveaway. If we're going to educate, but we wanted people to take something away at the end of the event as well.
Yeah.
And I think all of those things are sometimes more important than thinking of your theme. Think about your audience.
Yeah. Audience objectives. That's our answer, Deji. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was question one. I still have a couple more that I would like possibly that you could attend to. And thank you for the answer. So I'll say my second one, and this is kind of this is largely influenced by some of the events that I've seen Cecilia attend. So I'm just wondering, being that you've attended conferences and events and webinars and whatnot, I'm curious about what engaging features you've seen recently or across any amount of time that have stuck out to you. So I know for you, Cecilia, I remember you were interacting with this board. I can't remember exactly what event it was, but it was in one of the videos that we did, that you had this very interactive board where you could tap things, and play with all sorts of different fidgets on the board. So I'm just wondering, what sort of engaging features like that have stuck out to you that you possibly think would be worth, implementing for future events?
You know what? I think it depends on the outcome here, right? Because I remember some really fun stuff, right? As you mentioned, this board, it was like an agility board. So there was, it will start shining and you have to hit it. And it's basically to measure how quickly your body reacts, in essence. So you had to, and I'm super competitive. So all I wanted to do was just basically get the highest score. For me, that wasn't really engaging with the brand. And if I'm gonna, now I feel really bad. I don't even remember what. I don't remember the brand. I remember the activity, right? But one thing I do remember that I always think, it's always sort of stuck in my head. No, there's actually two things. One is taking photos of people from that comes to the show or every event, but then it automatically gets made up into the logo of the event or the company.
Nice.
And what they also do is they can then email that to you, or they can give you a printed version at the end, and you go, oh, that's me in there, and you feel a part of the story, right? You feel engaged because you were there, you were a part of that. Or some people even then print it on swag to take home.
Photo booths.
Exactly. I love that because it feels like you're a part of the journey. The other one is, and for those of you who follow me on social media, has probably seen this. There's a company out there called Song Division who creates personalized songs. So they will ask you a couple of questions, either about your company or about you personally. And then literally within sort of 10, 15 minutes, they will create a personalized song for you. And they will perform it back to you. And they do this both virtually or in person.
I like that.
And that is amazing. Honestly, I've been lucky enough to have 2 songs written about me. One, my personal, and one with an association I do some volunteer work for on the side. And every time, like that, it's stuck with me.
I've always wanted a song.
Yeah, see? Yeah. I'm going to introduce you to them. So yeah, Song Division for everyone. But again, that is just a really personalized way of creating engagement with your audience. And, I know they were on the Hard Rock Cafe booth. And I remember that. I remember that they were there at that booth because it made a personal connection to me.
Yeah, that's really nice. Really nice. Some other basic things that I've seen, certainly at trade shows this year, really getting the delegates to use the event app, creating a treasure hunt. So there were lots of different banners throughout the huge event. It was a huge event, and you had to take a photograph of or take a shot of the QR code every time you went past one. And the person that passed the most, which really helps then with your flow of traffic at the events, won a prize. So yeah.
And you know what? That is a great way. I think, again, it just comes back to, if it's not an audience that's going to care about a treasure hunt, then don't do it, because you're putting effort into something that may not be necessary. And I would also say, make sure that the prices are valuable enough for the audience to engage. Right? Because if you're going to give them a £5 Amazon voucher, I can tell you I would not engage with that, because I couldn't pay £5 myself on Amazon. So you got to make sure that it's definitely valuable enough for that audience to then engage.
Yeah. Wonderful.
I think we're sort of running out of time here.
I was hoping to get one in.
Maybe you can post them in questions and we'll get back to you. Sure. Thank you so much for your questions, David. We love that you can join us on screen as well.
Good to see you.
Brilliant.
That worked.
Oh, sorry. I know. It's amazing, isn't it? And that wasn't hard.
No.
Deji is over in the States, I believe. He's been to a couple of our events. He does ask me difficult questions, but I like when he comes on screen.
They weren't too difficult.
But exactly. But that's how easy it is for Deji to sit in the US, because we consider the time zone today 4:00 in the UK, but that's also 11:00 in the States on the East Coast. So it works perfectly. And people can join us on screen, and we can have engaging conversations.
Wonderful. Cecilia, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Loved every moment.
Me too.
And we'll definitely have to come back for a part 2.
Oh, God, I think so. We like to talk, so
But we're going to make this available on demand.
Absolutely.
And the giveaways are going to be, they're available on the platform.
They are there straight away under files. And if you need anything, feel free to connect with me and Lisa, obviously on LinkedIn, anywhere. We're always happy to help.
We are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.